Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, we're reading summarizing the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And the chapter is called The Opulence of the Absolute. And to understand this chapter, actually Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said that we must see the last verse of the 9th chapter. The 9th chapter is the most confidential knowledge, and the final verse of the 9th chapter is a very, very important verse, the only verse which has been repeated twice in the Bhagavad Gita, which is Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yadi mam namaskuru mam eva shi satyam te Prati Jani Priyosime. Although in the 9th chapter it's described a little differently, but same meaning. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. This is the most confidential knowledge of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Right in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita, this is the crux of it. So the 10th chapter is starting at this point. And the first verse, Krishna is saying, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Bhuya eva mahabaho shinu me paramam vacha yatte ham priyamanaya vakshyami hitakamyaya. Immediately the first word he uses is bhuya, and bhuya means again. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has said that it's very significant that he uses this word bhuya, because he just wants to re-emphasize on the previous verse, on the 9th verse, Man mana bhava mad bhakto. And also he says that I am saying this to you, dear Arjuna, because you are my dear friend, and so for your benefit I shall speak to you further. So this 10th chapter is Krishna speaking about himself. So far, all these chapters, Krishna has spoken about devotional service, he's spoken about bhakti, he's spoken about, varieties of things, but he hasn't spoken about himself very much. He's only beginning now to speak about himself, how he is and how he's having a relationship with the devotees. And also he describes in this chapter who knows him. Immediately the second verse, he explains that neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulence, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and sages. So immediately he's describing how not even the demigods and great sages who are doing so much, such exalted great personalities, they do not know who he is. They do not know his origin, they do not know his opulence. In every respect, they have some kind of idea of who Krishna is, but they don't know him completely. And then Krishna says that he who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, and as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, he only, undiluted among men, is freed from all sins. So he's already described how demigods and great sages don't know him. But then immediately he's saying that someone does know me, because he who knows me is freed from sin. So he's giving a clue as to, okay, there is someone who does know me. And then the next verse, next two verses, the next two verses is intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, control of the senses, control of the mind, happiness and distress, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame and infamy. All these various qualities of living beings are created by me alone. This 10th chapter is also really important because it is establishing these 4 seed verses of Bhagavad Gita, which is Chatushloki. These 4 verses is the whole Bhagavad Gita summarized, and that is verses 8 to verses 11. And all these verses are building up to these 4 verses, and they're very, very important. The whole Bhagavad Gita is understood with these 4 verses. And here he's describing how all these qualities, intelligence, knowledge, fearlessness, fear, birth, death, happiness, distress, he's also saying it as opposites. Happiness, distress, birth, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, everything is coming from him. And Prabhupada, in this purport, he very interestingly, he says that everything auspicious and inauspicious, everything is coming from Krishna, because Krishna is the origin of everything. And then he goes on to say that in this material world, actually nothing is auspicious, because in reality everything, even good, is inauspicious, because there is nothing auspicious in the entirety of this whole material world. So anyway, it's a nice explanation that Prabhupada gives. But then the next verse is he described all these qualities, and the next verse he's talking about the progenitors, all these the great sages, the 7 sages, Saptarishis, and the 4 sages, the Chatush Kumar, 4 Kumaras, and the Manus, the progenitors, they're all also coming from me. The mind and all the living beings populating the various planets descend from them. So ultimately everything is coming from Krishna, and that's what Krishna is alluding to. This is the next verse, verse 7. One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. So initially he says the great sages, the great demigods, they don't understand me. Then he says those who understand me, they are freed from all sin. And here he's giving a clue for what they do. Those who understand, those who are convinced of Krishna's opulence, they engage in unalloyed devotional service. Also, this Bhagavad Gita is getting us to the point of complete surrender. It's getting us to this point of the 18th chapter, 1866. Sarva dharman parityagya nam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami ma suchaha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto Krishna. Actually, Prabhupada explains here that if you know how great God is, if you know that God is supreme, then it is your duty to surrender. And Prabhupada uses in the purport, he says, if one knows factually how God is great, then naturally he becomes a surrendered soul and engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord. So in Goloka Vrindavan, everyone is surrendered to Krishna. Everyone serves Krishna. Funnily enough, they don't even know his opulence, which seems like a contradictory over here. But the opulence of Vrindavan, it is described by our acharyas that if you take a teaspoon of salt and if you put it in a cup of water, then the water will taste very salty. And if you take bags and bags of salt and if you pour it in a river and then taste the water from the river, you won't taste the salt. So our acharyas have explained how the salt is like the opulence, the Aishwarya. And in Vrindavan, the sweetness, the madhurya, is so much more like a river. It's so much more that even you put kilos and kilos of salt, you cannot taste it. That is the nature of Vrindavan. Anyway, this is a very elevated platform to be serving in Vrindavan. But before that, first we have to know also his opulences. We have to know Mahaprabhu, who came to give Braja Bhakti. He came to give this specific love of Godhead in Vrindavan. He spoke with Rupa Goswami, with Sanatan Goswami, with Prabodhananda Saraswati, with Ramananda Rai, and he spoke what? He spoke the avatars, the varieties of avatars. He spoke the types of expansions. He spoke about the Chaturvyuha, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha and Vasudev. Krishna expands as Balaram, and after he expands as Balaram, then Balaram expands as Sankarshan, the Chaturvyuha, and then from the Chaturvyuha, the Sankarshan, another Sankarshan and another Chaturvyuha expand, and from that Sankarshan Mahavishnu expands, and from that Mahavishnu then you have Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. All of this is explained by Lord Chaitanya himself, because you have to understand Sambandha Tattva Gyan. You have to understand who Krishna is to later on understand that he's just a cowherd boy. But anyway, that's what this chapter is alluding to. Krishna is revealing himself. And Prabhupada here nicely explains that as he reveals himself within the heart, then one must surrender also within the heart. These next 4 verses are actually, you can speak about these verses for hours and hours and hours, because this is the crux of Bhagavad Gita. This is the main substance. Verse number 8. Aham sarvasya prabhava matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. The most prominent words in this verse is worshipping him with all their hearts, Buddha Bhava Samanvita, because these verses, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan and our Srila Prabhupada is actually taking from them and presenting it in a palatable way that we can digest, also adding his own commentary. These verses are taking you to the platform of Bhav. They're taking you past all the stages and they're taking you to the platform of Bhav. And Bhav means to worship Krishna with all of your heart. And as you do this, Krishna explains in the very next verse, text number 9, that Matchita Madgata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam Katyantas Chamam Nityam Tushyanti Cha Ramanti Cha. Matchita Madgata Prana, which means I am the life of those devotees. I am the life and soul of those devotees. Which devotees? Those devotees that are on the platform of Bhav, who are completely giving their whole heart to Krishna. And in the previous purport, Prabhupada actually explains how this is done. He explains that you have to understand, like the previous verses have explained, how everything is coming from Krishna. The progenitors are coming from Krishna. All the jivas are coming from Krishna. All the elements, all the varieties of fear and fearlessness, happiness, distress, all of these things, everything is coming from Krishna. First we have to understand this. And how do you understand this? Prabhupada explains in the end of this purport that you have to understand this from the words of the spiritual master. Let me find it here, 1 second. Yeah. Lord Krishna is the source of all generations, and he's called the most efficient cause of everything. He says, because everything is born of me, I am the original source of all. Everything is under me. No one is above me. There is no supreme controller other than Krishna. One who understands Krishna in such a way from a bona fide spiritual master with references from the Vedic literature engages all his energy in Krishna consciousness and becomes a truly learned man. So Prabhupada here explains how you have to learn this, you have to understand this from the words of the spiritual master. And to learn from the spiritual master, you have to inquire submissively and you have to serve him. And as you serve him, the mood of surrender starts to begin. The idea of you being the controller, you being the master of everything, has to be thrown away, which is basically what Bhagavad Gita is. It's a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, And Arjuna has to give up this whole idea that he is the doer and he's the actor, and he has to come to the point of surrendering to the words of Krishna and just doing as Krishna wants him to do. And for us, on a practical level, this is done by following the order of the spiritual master, by surrendering completely to the spiritual master. Actually, when we take Diksha, then in one sense we're now property of that personality, you know. We see ourselves as just a tool, an instrument for this person to use me in his service to Krishna. So it's very important to understand this, and that's how you get to the platform of Bhav. That's how, with all your heart, you worship the spiritual master. You see, the movement actually even spread in this way. You know, when Prabhupada went to America, he just met a bunch of hippies who didn't know anything. They didn't know anything about all these details. They didn't know about Chaturvyuha, and they didn't know about, you know, who Krishna is and Aham Sarvasya Prabhu. They don't know any verses, but somehow they still managed to preach. It's very interesting how this happened. This happened because to some degree they have some bhav, because they have firm attachment to Srila Prabhupada. They have such attraction to Srila Prabhupada. They have so much love for Srila Prabhupada that when they speak to someone else, even if they don't know what they're speaking, that bhav is what attracts other living entities. That strong attachment, that strong surrender. You know, even though they have no idea, maybe some of them were even a little high. Actually, you can watch this video, this really old video where there's people speaking, you know, and you have no idea what they're saying. It makes no sense, whatever they're saying. But there's something really attractive about them. And that attraction is that they have become attracted to the spiritual master. And the spiritual master is a close representative of Krishna. And because of that, it is non-different. Yasya prasada bhagavad prasado, yasya prasadana nagati kutopi, which means that attachment is non-different to attachment to Krishna. You know, Prabhupada had Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he had a very interesting dream. He had a dream that Prabhupada was sitting on a Vyasasana, and the whole sampradaya, all the demigods, all great sages, all of these personalities that Krishna is talking about, was sitting in front of Srila Prabhupada, and they were interviewing Prabhupada. They were asking him questions, yeah. And then they asked him, what about ISKCON? How is ISKCON doing? And Prabhupada's response, this is all in a dream, Prabhupada's response was, they're extremely fallen, all the members. They have no good qualities, they have no hope, they have no good samskars, they're born of complete sinful background and their tendency is completely sinful. And they're all listening. And then Prabhupada says, but they have one good quality. Somehow or other, they're extremely attached to me. And with that one quality alone, you know, they have some hope. And this is Prabhupada speaking to all the acharyas. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he woke up, he had this dream, and Prabhupada was present when he had this dream. He went to Prabhupada and he asked Prabhupada that, Prabhupada, I had such a dream, you know, is this real? And Prabhupada just smiled at him to kind of confirm that, yes, this is our case. Anyway, that's how we can get to Bhav. Just love the spiritual master and love Krishna as much as you can. Serve him with all your heart. Give all of your energy to him. And when you do that, what happens is Krishna is explaining in the next verse. Matchitta madgata prana. You become the life, the prana. You become the life. Krishna becomes the life of such a devotee. You give your heart to the spiritual master. What is that verse? I reciprocate with them as they surrender unto me. So you give your heart to the spiritual master. It's none different to giving your heart to Krishna himself. So Krishna in return also, he becomes your life. He becomes your life and soul. Bodhayanta parasparam. Bodhayanta parasparam. Katyantas chamam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Katyantas chamam nityam, which means such devotees, they simply converse amongst one another. Katha, Krishna Katha. The nature of the tongue is to constantly speak or to eat. One of those two things. So, Katha means talking. actually. That's what katha means. And Krishna katha means talking about Krishna. Rupa Goswami has explained very nicely that the tongue has to be engaged, rasanasya. And so if simply every day you engage the tongue in speaking about Krishna, very soon the material disease that is so deep-rooted in the heart will be completely destroyed. I'll read the translation to this verse, it's very nice. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So again, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, for this verse, he says, Katyantas chamam nityam means very, very loud kirtan. This is what he says. He says that in Kali Yuga, the practical application of this verse is loud kirtan, extremely loud as it can be possible. Because it's, in the verse, it explains how it's always enlightening one another, you know. So we can sit down and speak about Krishna, and that's a nice way to enlighten one another. But the best way to enlighten one another is to very, very loudly chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This is what we're doing in the temple room every day, in our Krishna Balaram temple. We're trying to make Krishna our complete life and soul. And according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it's done by very, very loudly chanting Hare Krishna. So now it's very clear that the class of devotees that we're talking about are devotees on the platform of Bhav, devotees that have completely given their heart to Krishna, devotees that cannot live without Krishna. There's complete life and soul. Yeah, and Prabhupada very nicely in this verse, he explains how just like a fish cannot live without water, that is how we must become. We must become like that, the fish being us and the water being Krishna. That we cannot for a moment, as soon as we're out of the association of devotees, as soon as we're out of the environment of Krishna Katha, and Prabhupada in the purport, he says so nicely, he says that if one does not have the anxiety to be Krishna conscious, then his desire to hear about Krishna cannot be aroused. He cannot awaken his desire to hear about Krishna unless he's very anxious. Constant anxiety. The jivas like to be in constant anxiety. We're always extremely worried about so many externals. But actually, the jiva's nature is to be in constant anxiety. Mother Yashoda is in constant anxiety. In Vrindavan, when Krishna leaves home, he steps out of his house. Instantly, Mother Yashoda is in anxiety mode. You know, she's thinking like, my dear son, he's so soft. It says he's so soft that she wouldn't want to touch him with soft things. That's how soft he was. You know, she would think that something very soft, like a silken cloth that's very, very soft, she would put it on him, but she would feel this is like sandpaper compared to his body, which is so soft. And soft means delicate. So she would be very much worried that he's gonna trip over, fall over, some demon is gonna come, he's gonna step on some, rock. Although it describes that even the hard rocks, when Krishna steps on them, they become very soft, just to serve him. They want to be like nice to be stepped on. Anyway, so Prabhupada says that you have to be in constant anxiety. You have to be in anxiety to be Krishna conscious. And when you're in such anxiety, only then does the desire to hear about Krishna awaken. And as this desire to hear about Krishna awakens, then Shravanam and Kirtanam, and in this purport, Prabhupada explains very nicely how that bhakti is something that is given to you by the spiritual master. It is a seed that is planted in the core of your heart, a seed. And this seed, once planted by Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha, one moment of association with a sadhu, when this seed is planted, then we must cultivate this seed by Shravanam and Kirtanam, by hearing and chanting. And as you hear and chant, then quoting Madhya Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Mahaprabhu is explaining how this bhakti is like a bhakti lata. It grows, and it grows past all of the heavenly planets, all of the higher, Jana Loka, Tapa Loka, Mahar Loka, Brahma Loka, and it goes all the way to the edge of the universe. It's Bhakti Lata Bij, and then it breaks through. Actually, you can see sometimes plants they're very soft. They're very, especially the ends of a plant which is growing is a very soft thing. But it can even grow through concrete, It can even grow through something really hard. So just like that, the Bhakti Lata bridge, it grows through the covering of this material world, which is so thick, The description is that the Hare Krishna, the description is that the material world, I think it's 8 million yojanas wide. Like if it's this small, then the next covering, which is of earth, is double the width of the whole diameter of the whole universe, and then after that is water and air, and that's even more double. So the covering of the shell is really, really large, and to break through that covering is not so easy. You need a lot of hearing and a lot of chanting. That's why we come to Vrindavan Dham, because everything is multiplied here thousands and thousands of times, reading Bhagavad Gita and hearing about these things. And then as it grows, Chaitanya Charitamrita says, it grows past the Viraja river. It grows all the way to the Brahman, the impersonal effulgence of Krishna. And it keeps going even more. It goes to the Vaikuntha planets. And Lord Chaitanya has said that it can grow all the way to Goloka Vrindavan, And then that's not it. That's prema. When you reach Goloka Vrindavan, that's prema. But then Mahaprabhu says, and then just like any creeper, it will start to bear flowers and fruits. And then Radharani will offer these flowers and fruits to Krishna. So that's the understanding of what we're doing here, and why we want to be on the platform of bhav. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. They're completely satisfied. And ramanti, Radha Raman, means the enjoyer of Radharani. Ramana means to enjoy. Ram means the reservoir of all pleasure. Every single jiva is seeking after pleasure, and this is the only means to be actually satisfied. Our nature is to be this, tushyanti cha ramanti cha, completely satisfied and completely enjoying, but enjoying with Krishna. Now we're trying to enjoy separately. So far from the Chatushloki, you understand that Krishna is the source of everything. Aham sarvasya prabhava. Everything emanates from him. And those who are a little intelligent and they understand this, with all their hearts, with their complete heart, they worship him, which is on the platform of bhav. And when they do this, then Krishna becomes their life and soul. And they cannot live for a minute without speaking about Krishna. And they're always doing Krishna Katha by the primary means of very loudly chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Then in the next verse, Krishna now explains how he responds to such devotees, what he does in return. Tesham satatu yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. This verse is very important also. It's like, it's a very nice verse. And the significant part of this verse that Prabhupada said is Priti Purvakam. Just worship Krishna with Priti. Priti means love. Prabhupada translates Priti Purvakam in loving ecstasy. Yeah, so for those devotees, Satata Yuktanam. Satata Yuktanam means constantly engaged. Constantly engaged in bhajan, Priti bhajan, bhajatam Priti Purvakam. To them Krishna gives intelligence. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. He gives them intelligence, not just any ordinary, mundane, material intelligence, but he gives them intelligence by which they can come to me. So in this verse, he explains that to those devotees that are constantly engaged with all of their hearts, constantly engaged in Shravanam Kirtanam, to them he starts giving them indication from within the heart. And from within the heart, he gives them a clue on how to advance in Krishna consciousness further and further. And again, who's in the heart? Chaitya Guru. Paramatma is in the heart. But maybe we're too dull-headed and we cannot recognize the Paramatma. even though he's very strongly sometimes indicating us to do certain things. But because we're so dull-headed, Krishna's so kind. Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj has said that Krishna's so kind, especially when you cry understanding how dull-headed you are, then Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam means that the Paramatma within your heart, he comes out and he manifests as the spiritual master, as the guru. And now the guru will tell you all the things that Paramatma has been telling you since time immemorial, but you've been too dull-headed to understand. And for us again, this is Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. This is how Krishna gives you intelligence. He sends you the devotee that is very close to him, who will then inspire you to go in the right direction. Yena mam upayanti te. By that direction you will reach Krishna. Yeah. From within. Prabhupada in his purport, he says something very nice. He says, a person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization, but if he is still not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instruction so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. The qualification is that a person always engage himself in Krishna consciousness and with love and devotion render all kinds of services. He should perform some sort of work for Krishna, and that work should be with love. If a devotee is not intelligent enough to make progress on the path of self-realization, but is sincere and devoted to the activities of devotional service, the Lord gives him a chance to make progress and ultimately attain to him. So also this point is being driven a lot by Prabhupada, that somehow or other, yena tena prakarena mana Krishna, just somehow or the other think of Krishna, somehow or the other act for Krishna constantly, always be engaged. And idle mind is the devil's workshop. And if you do that, even if you're very stupid, you have no intelligence, you cannot even understand Bhagavad Gita, you read it upside down, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You simply engage in Krishna consciousness constantly. And by doing that, Prabhupada gives us a confirmation here that even if he's not intelligent enough to make progress, Krishna from within gives him instruction so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. Even he may have a bona fide spiritual master, he may be attached to the spiritual organization. Just be attached to your service, whatever it is. Be completely, wholeheartedly, perform your service with love. That's the point that's being driven here. Because it's kind of contradictory, but in the next few verses, Prabhupada explains in the purport that only a lover of Krishna can understand Krishna. Only one who loves Krishna can know who he is. Because you may know someone, but when you love that person, then you will try and know every single detail about this person. And you'll try and want to know what is going on inside this person's mind, and what is this person's intentions, and what is this person's heart, because that is a symptom of love. You want to know all the details. You want to know all the tiny, minute details. So Prabhupada says in that purport that only a lover of Krishna can understand Krishna. But at the same time, many places Prabhupada says that to love God, you have to know God. Only if you know God, only then you can love Him. This he would preach so much, in many conversations, many morning walks, many conversations with Christians. He would say this, because they also have the principle of loving God, but he would ask them, but who is God? God is not just some man with a beard standing there who has no activities apart from just, watching the material world. That's a very dull idea of what God is. No, we have an identity, we have personality, we have likes and dislikes. So everything emanates from God. Aham sarvasya prabhava. Which means you have to know these details about God. God has a name, He has a form, He has a mother. He's unborn, but He has a mother. He has activities, He has pastimes. This is very much important to know, because these details about Krishna are very attractive. And when you get to know these details, then your love for him awakens, because his activities are very beautiful. They're extremely wonderful. His pastimes in Vrindavan are mind capturing. In one of the verses here he says, I am Cupid. Cupid's nature is to capture the mind very, very strongly. So that's who Krishna is. Krishna is that Cupid. He's the Cupid of all Cupids. He's attracting Cupid by his activities. So we have to know who Krishna is. And as we further engage in Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, the Angas of Bhakti, then the last verse of this Chatushloki, Tesham evanukam partha aham agyana jam tama nashyami atma bhavasto jnana deepena bhasvata. Jnana deepena bhasvata. This is very, very significant. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. And Prabhupada starts the purport by saying, when Lord Chaitanya was in Banaras, promulgating the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, thousands of people were following him. Prakashananda Saraswati, a very influential and learned scholar at Banaras at that time, derided Lord Chaitanya for being a sentimentalist. That's how Prabhupada starts his purport. So this verse is now Krishna revealing himself to those devotees who have firstly understood his opulence, who firstly understood Aham Sarvasya Prabhava, that he is the source of everything. And by understanding that, they've come to the point of surrender. Because if someone is great and if I'm small, then, like Prabhupada says, naturally the small will surrender to the large, And once he surrenders, then he engages. He doesn't just surrender. Surrender means you work for that person, But not like a paid worker. You work with love, with all your heart. And as you work with all your heart, then Krishna becomes satisfied and you get to know a little more about him. And as you get to know a little more about him, you like to speak about him. You like to, he becomes your life and soul, which is what the next verse says. And as he becomes your life and soul, then even more the intensity of your attachment to him, the intensity of your work towards him will increase even more and more. And then, Tesham Satata Yuktanam, then Krishna will start seeing that this person is so much attached to me, he'll start gently nudging you in the right direction. And if you go in the right direction, when he's gently nudging you, then Jnana Deepena Bhasvata, which means then Krishna will completely reveal himself to you. He will completely give himself to you. This is what this verse is saying. It is a very, very significant verse. This is the end of Chatushloki. And Arjuna actually, he understands everything after this verse. In all reality, there was no need for the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita kind of ended here. But Prabhupada actually even says that the next few verses, they are not so much for pure devotees. He says it straight up. He says that now everything's been established by these 4 verses. But Arjuna asks further questions. He asks questions further because Prabhupada says, for the benefit of others, for the benefit of all those personalities who have not come to the platform of loving him with all their hearts, of worshipping him and serving him exclusively, of just making Krishna their life and soul. That's what the rest of this chapter is also more or less just Krishna speaking for such persons. Yeah, and actually, I'll take that back, because these 4 verses are complete, but they become even more complete after Arjuna speaks, because Arjuna teaches us how to respond to these verses, And interestingly enough, now Arjuna is going to speak. He hasn't spoken for I think 3 or 4 chapters. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the last time he spoke was in chapter 7. And then Krishna was just speaking. It was a one-ended conversation. And finally now Arjuna is speaking. And what does Arjuna say? After hearing all of this is a famous verse. Param Brahma Param Dhava Pavitram Param Bhavan Purusham Sasvatam Divyam Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum Ahustvam rishaye sarve devarshis narada tatha asito devalo vyasa swayam chaiva bravisi me. Arjuna said, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, Vyasa confirmed this truth about you. And now you yourself are declaring it to me. So this is the conclusion that he comes to after hearing so much from Krishna. He's finally speaking after I think three chapters. Last time he spoke was in chapter 7. And Prabhupada in the purport, he just presents many verses, many evidences from Shastra, how Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Basically, that's the gist of it. And then text 14, Krishna says, O Krishna, I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. Neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personality. So now, in the beginning of the chapter, Krishna said that the demigods and the sages, they don't understand me. It's like a sandwich, okay? Try and understand it. Like the front is the same as the end in a sandwich, right? So he said, no one understands me. Demigods don't understand me. I am the source of everything. And then the main bhakti, the relationship that the devotee is having with Krishna, those last 3 verses specifically. And then again, it's I am the Supreme. So I am the Supreme was here. And the sages don't understand me. But now Arjuna is speaking. This is the back end of the sandwich, so to speak. And then he says, this is very significant, the next verse. Indeed, you alone know yourself by your own internal potency. O Supreme Person, origin of all, Lord of all beings, God of gods, Lord of the universe. And then he speaks. Okay, yeah, so this is kind of where the sandwich is ending. Initially he said that no one understands me. But then he said, some people do understand me. So it's already like a bit confusing what's going on here. And then he says, the relationship, explains the relationship that he has with those devotees that are on the platform of Bhav, giving his heart completely, to indicate who are those that understand him. And then Arjuna says, you're the Supreme, no one but you can understand you. But previously we just talked about how the devotee understands Krishna. But if you look at it carefully, Jnana Deepena Bhasvata means Krishna reveals himself to the devotee, because only Krishna knows himself. Only Krishna can understand Krishna. The jiva is too insignificant. But because Krishna is unlimited, if he wants, he can, and don't misunderstand me, don't try and think of it in a Mayavadi way, but when you become one with Krishna, in one sense, why is the spiritual master recognized as none different to Krishna? Because he's so close to Krishna, he's practically one with Krishna. There's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita which says that Rupa Goswami's body is completely identical to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's body. It says that. It says, and this is a verse by Kavi Karnapur. Why it says this? Because this verse that we chant before giving any class, before speaking anywhere, Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam, means that Rupa Goswami has understood the mind of Lord Chaitanya. I had an experience in the temple room where I had to sing the Mangalarti. Generally when I sing the Mangalarti, I like to play the Mridanga myself, because when you play the Mridanga yourself, the Mridanga does what you want it to do, But a devotee came and he wanted to play the Mridanga for me, and initially I was a little bit kind of annoyed because I wanted to play it myself. But anyway, he's a nice devotee, so I let him play, and he played the Mridanga so perfectly that it was like he was reading my mind. And I had the experience that I felt that his body was none different to mine, because the body works with the mind does whatever, and then your body reacts. I move my hand because the mind is the intelligence mind, so on, is controlling these things. So his body was working according to my mind. So I really felt that his body is non-different to my body right now. This is one body. doing the kirtan, doing the Mangalarti kirtan for Krishna. So Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam, Rupa Goswami has understood the mind of Lord Chaitanya. And so all of his activities are non-different to Lord Chaitanya's activities. Very easy to understand. You cannot offer anything to Krishna because Krishna is the most attractive personality. So he's not going to be attracted to anything but himself. Because he's all attractive. All attractive means he's attractive to himself also. You know, so how we understand this is that our offerings of devotional service, our offerings of kirtans and cooking and so on and whatnot, has to be connected to the Sampradaya, has to be connected to Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami's disciple is Raghunath Das Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami's disciple is Krishnadas Kaviraj. And like that, it is coming down to our Prabhupada. And our Prabhupada has understood the minds of all these personalities. So our Prabhupada is also an extension of Lord Chaitanya's body. And we have to understand Prabhupada's mind by reading this book, by reading Bhagavatam, by reading Krishna book. That is the mind of Lord Chaitanya in words that are applicable for us to understand. And when you understand this, and if you act on this platform of being completely with all of your heart serving Krishna with bhav, with some love, then Krishna will accept that as an extension of the body of Lord Chaitanya. In Jagannath Puri, Mahaprabhu is looking at Jagannath, and Jagannath is attracted to Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu is attracted to Jagannath. Our Krishna in Vrindavan is non-different to Jagannath. So we're offering Mahaprabhu to him. Or Radharani. You know, Prabhupada was asked, what is Krishna like? And Prabhupada said, Krishna likes Radharani. So we offer Radharani to Krishna. Radharani is non-different to Krishna. We're servants of Radharani. This is actually what this verse is talking about. When Arjuna is saying that only you know yourself, it's very interesting. He says, you alone know yourself by your own internal potency. What is the internal potency? Radharani is Krishna's internal potency. So who knows Krishna? Only Radharani knows Krishna. So what's going on here is something very secretive actually. It is something very deep. Bhagavad Gita, sometimes people think it's like, that's the ABCs of Krishna consciousness. That's just but this is Chatushloki. This is the crux of it. Which means all the other verses are just explaining what these 4 verses are explaining. And this is what we have to understand from Bhagavad Gita. We have to become one with Krishna in our eternal separate identity, if that makes any sense. Yeah. It's a lot, but if you meditate on these things and you try and, perform devotional service with these things churning in your head, these verses can sound a little impersonal. Aham sarvasya prabhava. There's a story actually, it's a nice story. There was a small boy who said, God is everywhere, God is present everywhere, and to a man. And this man asked this boy, prove it to me that God is everywhere. So this boy got a pot of milk, and he gave that man a pot of milk, and he told him that, is there cream in this milk? And the man said, yes, of course, it's milk, there's cream. And then he said, where is it? Show it to me, this is just milk. And he was like, how do I show it to you? It's there, it's common understanding, everyone knows cream is in the milk. So then this boy said, so just like that, God is present everywhere. But then the boy took the pot of milk, and he said, but you don't have the intelligence, I'll pull out the cream. And he starts churning. And as he churns and churns and churns, then from the milk itself the cream comes out. And then this boy told this man that Krishna consciousness means you have to churn, you have to act, you have to perform devotional service. And as you engage in devotional service, then Krishna will reveal himself from the milk itself. And that is what these verses are saying. Just constantly be engaged in churning your Krishna consciousness. Just constantly be engaged in performing devotional service and the cream will come out. Krishna will reveal himself. He said it in Bhagavad Gita. His words, and then he double confirmed it, because Krishna's words sometimes cannot be taken 100% because he has a tendency to lie also. So Arjuna also confirms it later on, double confirmation from the devotee and the bhakta. So take it from that, Krishna is the absolute. There's a nice lecture where Prabhupada says, Krishna is the absolute, which means you can say anything about him. If you say he is rascal, then yes, that is also correct, because he is absolute, he is biggest rascal. And if you say he is great, then yes, that is also correct. He is the greatest of all greats, that is the nature of absolute. More or less this chapter is kind of concluded here, but from our understanding of the verse before, where it says that the devotees relish to keep on hearing about him. Katyantascha mam nityam. Nityam means eternally. They want to go on hearing, although everything's kind of been concluded. The devotee wants to keep hearing. So then the next verse, Arjuna says, please tell me in detail of your divine opulence. Okay, and then are we running? We're running. Jai. All right, so then Arjuna says that, please tell me more. Please tell me your divine opulences. And then he says in text 17, also going back to the end of the 9th chapter, he says, O Supreme Mystic, how shall I constantly think of you, and how shall I know you? In what various forms are you to be remembered, O Supreme Personality of Godhead? Again, coming to the point of how Krishna says things, and then Arjuna confirms it in the end. And then now Krishna speaks. Oh no, one more verse. O Janardhan, again please describe in detail the mystic power of your opulences. I am never satiated in hearing about you. For the more I hear, the more I want to taste the nectar of your words. Relating to that verse again, that devotees like to simply discuss about Krishna. And now Krishna speaks again. Now from this verse till the end, he is just describing his opulence in an external way. And Prabhupada says this is for, more or less he says this is for those who are not very advanced in Krishna consciousness, to be able to appreciate Krishna in whatever they see. And these questions, these further talks were instigated by Arjuna for the benefit of others. And now Krishna simply explains how he will tell you, I will tell you of my splendorous manifestations, but only of those which are prominent. O Arjuna, for my opulence is limited. Yeah, so from verses 20 to 42, to 39, verses 20 to 39, he's just explaining how of the trees I am the banyan tree, of the beasts I am the lion, of the aquatics I am the shark, of this I am this. But there's one very nice one which is 25, which is a good one to remember, and our acharyas also comment on this. Yeah, 25, here it is. Maharshi nam Bhrigur aham giram asyam ekam aksharam yagya nam japa yagyosmi stavaranam Himalaya. Yagya nam japa yagya means, yagya nam means of the yagya. Of yagyas, I am japa yagya. But also you can break yagya nam to mean yagya nam japa yagya. So he's saying that he's nam japa, Hari nam japa. Of all the yagyas, he's nam japa. Anyway, that's just a nice little, cherry on top of this verse. And then the rest of the verses is just him describing, which you can read for yourself, of the purifiers, of I'm the wind, of the demigods, I'm Indra, of all creations, I'm the beginning, the end, and the middle, of the letters, I am A, so on and so forth, of the Vedas, I am Samaveda, of all devouring things, I'm time, of all cheats, I'm gambling. But anyway, the end of it, verse 40, 41 and 42 is also again confirming that these verses are, every verse is important, but they are more for externally seeing Krishna. he says, O mighty conqueror of enemies, there is no end to my divine manifestation. What I've spoken to you is but a mere indication of my infinite opulences. Know that all opulent, beautiful and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. So all of these things is just a tiny insignificant spark of his splendor. It's not really who he is. But what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? Whenever someone says but, you can practically disregard whatever else he said before that, because a but means that, okay, but what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support the entire universe. And that's how this chapter ends. Also just one small thing before we conclude is that to understand, like for example, he says, of the beasts I am a lion. Why is a lion so attractive? It stands very royally, it looks very beautiful, kind of effulgent, and it roars really powerfully, has a very strong presence. What constitutes that animal to have such qualities? Why is a sloth not royal? Why is a turtle not royal? Why is the lion royal? Because the lion is borrowing this quality from Krishna, and it's Krishna's quality, and what you're seeing in the lion is actually Krishna's quality. And that's how we understand these verses. It's not that Krishna is the lion, it's not that Krishna is the shark, but these qualities that the shark has, that fierceness that the shark has, that royalness that a lion has, the purification, Shakti that the wind has, these are Krishna's qualities. And we can see these qualities of Krishna by observing these external material things. It's just a way to help us to be Krishna conscious. But the main thing is this Chatushloki. It's the main point of the whole Bhagavad Gita. And by understanding these points, we should completely surrender to Krishna. We should surrender to Guru. Sarva dharman parityagya nam ekam sharanam raja. Aham tvam sarva bhapebhyo mokshashyami ma suchaha. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki.